Welcome to Notes on a Painting. Notes on a Painting is a podcast by artist Olivia Kemp and art historian Esme Garlake. Together each week we will discuss a painting that one of us has chosen and researched. Our choices of painting will reflect where our tastes differ and overlap across the history of art.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. Not bad. How you doing?
Not bad at all. Very excited for this week's episode.
Yeah, we're going to Florence this week because I guess even more than usual, this is a painting that is still in exactly the same place that it was made for.
Mm.
Um, so it's in the convent of Saint San Marco in Florence. And it is one of the frescoes done by Fra Angelico there around 1440 to 1442. And the one we're looking at today is the mocking of Christ.
Is this one we've both seen in real life? Is that like a rare thing?
Yeah, I think so. I presume if we've both been to San Marco, then we have. I don't remember this one specifically,
No, I'm
um,
the same. It's not, I was
because
like 20 or something, so I don't
yeah,
remember.
but we have both seen it, yeah. And we both, I also think being there and being in that convent is
Mm.
part of understanding part of seeing this painting in real life, even if we don't technically remember the exact painting. There are so many to choose from, so I went with this one. Yeah. But yeah, would you like to describe the painting?
Yeah, this one's a fun one to describe.
Good.
So, it's the whole composition is obviously it's sort of fresco on a wall, but the it's a rectangle, but the top is an arch. So it's a rectangle shape, but with the arch sort of missing at the top. And then it feels like an interior space with two figures in the foreground, and then a Christ-like figure on a plinth in the background in white. One figure on the left is female and wearing kind of pinkish red robes. And then the figure on the right in the foreground looks like a friar, um, Dominican, not really sure, black cape,
Mm.
with a big old bald bonce with the hair ring,
Yeah.
and he's reading. And then the Christ is blindfolded, but you can sort of see through the blindfold to see a face underneath. I don't know whether that's because the paint's worn away or on purpose. And then there's a collection of hands. So the Christ has normal two hands holding some kind of orb and a scepter sort of objects, more like a stick and a ball. And then
Yeah.
there's four hands floating around the Christ and then a fifth hand floating next to a floating head holding a hat. Um yeah,
You
that's
sound crazy.
I
Like to someone
sound like
who's
I'm having a fever dream.
yeah, to someone who's not also looking at this image at the same time. It's like, are you okay? Like, what do you
What do you mean
mean?
there's four floating hands, a floating head, and a floating hand with a hat?
Yeah. Yeah. And also one of the hands is holding a stick as
Yes.
well.
One of the four floating hands is holding a stick.
Crucially. Yeah. Yeah, great. Thank you. That
You're
was
welcome.
fun.
You're so welcome. Do with that what you will.
Yes. Well, I will start with like we do normally with Fra Angelico's life, and then I'll kind of come in with when he painted this at the
Hmm.
point in his life, and then there's a little bit at the end about later life. But also just quickly, the sources for today are classic Wikipedia, obviously on Fra Angelico. Also travelingintuscany.com, which was like one of the ones that actually had more information about this particular painting. So that was kind of useful for
I have a
some of
feeling
the.
this website has come up before. I think this
Really?
website came up when we did Piero della Francesca because
Yeah.
it sounds so random, but I feel like they had lots of stuff on different. It wasn't my episode, it was Mark's, but I feel like it had. lots of stuff about paintings in Tuscany, and it's been one of my
Yeah,
favorite
yeah, and it
schools.
is good. It's more like the some of the symbolism, or like it takes you through like the, but this one, because it was about the mocking of Christ, this specific fresco
Yeah,
was also quite useful. But hey,
great.
nothing against travelingintuscany.com.
No, shout them out.
Um, shout out. And then a Met Museum essay by Ross Finocchio, and an essay on Fra Angelico by Ben Street, which came out last year and was very useful for like some of also contemporary and modern artists who are
Mm.
influenced by him. Um, anyway, so Fra Angelico was born Guido di Pietro in the hamlet of Rupe Canina in the Mugello, which is not far from Florence. He was born towards the end of the 14th century, so probably around 1395. And not much is known about his early life. And we don't know anything about his parents, but we know that his brother Benedetto was also a painter. Um, so he probably received some of his training as a painter in the workshop of Lorenzo Monaco. Monaco was a Camaldolese monk. I just haven't said that out loud before. You're like,
First
saying it
run.
out loud. Monaco was the leading painter and manuscript illuminator in Florence up to his death in 1425. And this means it's likely that Angelico first worked as an illuminator, so learning to decorate manuscripts with small detailed images and bright colors.
Mm.
Sometime between 1418 and 1422, Angelico joined, this is where you were correct with your religious imagery, joined the Dominican friars at the convent of San Domenico in Fiesole, which is a town about 5 kilometers away from Florence and actually overlooks the city. So during this period, many of Fra Angelico's commissions came from Dominican institutions, and he painted altarpieces, three altarpieces at his own convent.
Mm.
When he became friar, he took the religious name Fra Giovanni Angelico, but he's also called Il Beato, which means the blessed. So these are like various names that he had. Oh no, wait. Angelico was the name that came later after he died. So at this time he was Fra Giovanni. I'm just saying Fra Angelico the whole way through. So he was like,
Commonly known as.
yeah, first he was Guido, then he was Giovanni, and later he was Angelico. But yeah. It's also kind of weird. I don't know if they were actually called these things or if it's more like in the documents around them.
If that's the
Things like
formal
that.
name they took on, you don't know what they were
Yeah.
called day to day. It's
Yeah, like even there's so often like Raphael was Raphael of Urbino and
yeah,
like or like Parmigianino. I mean, you know.
yeah. There's sort
So
of a bit of a
it's
there's the name they've acquired over time, and then there's
yeah,
the name they were probably known by.
yeah.
So,
But yeah, Fra Angelico. So Fra Angelico was one of the key artists of the early Renaissance, alongside the slightly younger Masaccio.
mm,
Masaccio's use of mathematical perspective and his sculptural way of representing human figures had a huge impact in Florence in the mid to late 1420s. Both Fra Angelico and Masaccio were hugely innovative in their treatment of pictorial space and depth, and their use of light and shadow to create a sense of three-dimensional forms. I think like the early Renaissance is a time where there are so many developments,
yeah,
but also it can it can get pretty confusing. Like what were the you have to track almost by the year or the certainly by the decade, like what artworks are coming out and what. So, I even in looking at this, I'm looking at early 16th century Italian art pretty much every day. Um, but thinking about like what was going on in Florence in the 1420s, it was like, right, I have to go back to like even my master's about the Italian Renaissance, it's still there's so much going on in each decade and in each place. Everything is so specific as well too.
yeah.
to the place and then how artists are traveling around, who their patrons are. So yeah, I kind of wrote out there like it's the pictorial space and depth, the light and shadow, so like the three-dimensionality. And yeah, obviously perspective is a huge part of that as well. Those I'm like, okay, I keep that in my head because otherwise I just get like um so Masaccio died prematurely around 1428, which made Fra Angelico then the city's most sought after artist. Over the 1430s, he had a growing number of commissions from beyond the Dominican community. So that would be private devotional works, altarpieces, frescoes commissioned by wealthy patrons, including from members of the Medici family, which were really gaining a lot of power in
Mm.
Florence at this in this period. Um, his style blended the older Gothic style with new, like I said, Renaissance depth and proportions and a realistic sense of space. And he also had a very busy workshop during this period, so in the 1430s. Um, Also, if anyone does go to Florence, I feel like Fra Angelico is like the convent at San Marco people do tend to go to. But
Yeah.
have you also seen the Masaccio frescoes? Because
Is that the Brancacci Chapel?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
the Adam
It's
and Eve
so, yeah,
and
Adam and Eve being expelled from the garden is like incredible as well.
yeah.
Yeah. So the San Marco Commission came towards the end of the 1430s. So in 1435, the Dominican community in Fiesole took over the convent in Florence and began renovating it. 3 years later, Cosimo de' Medici commissioned Fra Angelico to paint frescoes in the cloister, the chapter house, the refectory, dormitory cells, and corridors, and the high altar of the church in the
Right.
convent. And I guess this was like Cosimo de' Medici being a good Christian patron
Yeah.
and donating a lot to the art of a convent and the development of a convent. So yeah, Fra Angelico got a mega commission, basically.
Yeah, it's huge.
But he's also part of the convent as well. So he worked on the project from 1438 to 1443, which seems like a pretty short amount of time for all of that. Like
Yeah. Did he have
5 years.
assistants?
I presume so. Like, I presume he did, but then it's also quite an unusual thing that it was in a convent like that, and he lived there. So I don't know.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
maybe he had assistants who were also in the convent, though. That wouldn't be that crazy, would it? I
Yeah,
guess.
that would make more sense than bringing in outsiders
Yeah,
into the convent.
yeah. But he ended up in that time, in those 5 years, he ended up painting over 40 frescoes, and scholars unsurprisingly consider this to be his greatest achievement. The frescoes in the cells, like the painting we're looking at today, were intended primarily to aid the monks in prayer and spiritual contemplation. And apparently, Fra Angelico was unwilling to paint anything that didn't comply with his faith. And there's might be a myth, like some of these things, but apparently he prayed before starting any work. And so it was a very like spiritual commission for him, which makes a lot of sense if you're a
Mm.
monk painting in your own convent. Like,
Yeah.
um, but what's so amazing about visiting today and about these works is that they are in situ. So this, The Mocking of Christ, is in a cell in what would have been a monk's cell. And in some you can walk right in, others have a little rope. So you just look in. But it is amazing to see in in the situation there how
Yeah.
they would have been viewed originally.
That's
Um,
that's so productive. Like
you're looking a bit perturbed. You're
I'm
like,
like 40,
that's that's an
that's like
artist
eight a
competing
year.
with another
That's like
artist. Like
one every month and a bit.
you're still on like, that's not cool. Yeah, true,
No,
actually. Yeah, that is mad.
that's mental. So like one every like 5 weeks-ish, 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's crazy, actually. He also, in 1982, the Catholic Church officially declared him blessed.
I was at when he got the Beato.
Maybe, but maybe it was earlier than that actually. But yeah, maybe that. I mean, officially, yes,
Right.
that was it. But maybe he just had the spiritual guidance that artists today maybe don't have as much of. Some do, I'm sure, but it's quite, yeah. He was on a roll, basically.
Hmm.
Um, so to look at this painting in particular, um, it is in cell number 7, and it depicts the biblical episode of the mocking of Christ, which is the moments before the crucifixion where Christ was captured by the Romans and stripped, tortured, flogged, and mocked. And that's when the crown of thorns was placed on his head. So the story, in a biblical sense, is really about Christ's suffering. Like that's
Mm.
what it's really bringing out. Um, like you said almost immediately at the start about like the depth, like the room, there's a sense of space in this within this painting. And like you said, it's got the arch at the top of it, which I think in the context as well of the architecture of the cells, like the rooms have quite rounded, like they have rounded doors and things like that. I'm pretty sure they do. But
Yeah.
there's a sense of like that kind of shape in the architecture.
Yeah.
Um, but he uses blocks of colors and careful shading to create a kind of room within a room in this.
Yeah.
So the background is sparse, but it's definitely realistic in terms of its depth and shade. The green curtain is hanging from a wall behind, and the whole scene is enclosed. Yeah, so it's like a window-like frame, I guess, would be the sense. And this one actually is right next to the window of the cell. Um, so the composition is pretty much the same in every fresco in the cells. It's a different biblical scene represented in that window-like frame.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, also, I mean, just it's kind of a little detail, but the green curtain apparently is associated. This is maybe traveling with in Tuscany.com. I don't know. I can't actually remember where I read it, but it's apparently associated with the display of glory, which in this context is like, I guess, quite powerful because it's also framing his suffering. So it's
Mm.
his glory and his suffering combined. Um, and it is a really beautiful green. It's quite pastely, quite
Yeah.
soft green, which is again very characteristic of these frescoes. The colors are just incredible in them. Um, So, in terms of the figure of Christ, who, like you said, he's very much in the center, and he does seem, yeah, he's quite a strange figure in a way because you can't really see his face, and he's all in white as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, there are lots of like inversions of a king's attributes in this image. So he's sitting on a red box rather than a throne, but it is imitating a throne.
Mm.
Obviously, he wears a crown, but it's a crown of thorns. And like you said, he actually holds a reed and a stone instead of a scepter and an orb.
Mm.
So it is meant to be that, I guess, like mundane equivalent, like the everyday equivalent of what a king would have.
Right.
And yeah, the obviously the disembodied hands and faces surrounding him are bonkers, but also I think very powerful as well because these are the hands and the people who are mocking Christ. So the face of a man he's like lifting his hat up, but he's spitting at Christ, and you can see that there's
Right.
like this straight line of spit.
I just thought
It's
it was
all
blowing on him.
yeah, it does look like blowing actually, doesn't it? It's like the gust of wind or something.
Yeah.
Apparently he's spitting on him. And then the
While he
hands,
raises his cap.
yeah, he's like, hey, it's very weird. Um, and yeah, the hands are kind of like flies buzzing around him or something. Or
Mm.
there's a sense that they are really like agitating him in a way. You don't know where they're coming from. The direction is really unclear. And it seems to kind of convey the confusion that we imagine Christ could be feeling in the blindfold, which I think is so cool to do that in an image. Like for us, it's a confusing feeling.
Yeah.
But then we, in that sense, and we, if we put ourselves as well in the position that this is for monks who are contemplating Christ's suffering, in that, even in through the image, the confusion of it, we kind of emotionally relate to Christ in that
Yeah.
sense. Um, and so despite all of the suffering and I guess the cruelty that's going on around him, he seems very calm and regal. So he's in white. His robes are really beautifully draped over his body. And actually, his closed eyes are meant to be seen behind the
Hmm.
blindfold. So it's kind of like he's still very calm and accepting almost of this.
Yeah.
Um, and so the fragmentary details of like the hands and the face were possibly inspired by a painting by Lorenzo Monaco, who was Fra Angelico's teacher, Man of Sorrows, which was made in 1404 and is today in the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence. And it's interesting to compare because it actually shows the dead body of Christ in the tomb with Virgin Mary and St. John the Evangelist by his side. But then above him, there's like hands and faces and various objects that are floating around his head.
Oh.
Um, so again, it's like the disembodied parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really it I know it's completely like ahistorical to say it like this, but it's like a kind of surrealist. It's definitely surreal.
Mm.
Um, but you can see something quite modern about it. I don't know. It feels
Yeah.
strange.
Definitely.
Um, and so he is on this platform, but then below, almost like on another step, it seems, with a kind of pinky floor. There is, like you said, there's the Virgin Mary on the left, and then to the right, it's Saint Dominic. So the
Okay.
Dominican friar, OG Dominican, I guess.
The OG Dominican.
The OG Dominican. Um, both figures look serene and contemplative and are probably slightly detached, I would say, from what's going on behind them.
Yeah.
Um, the way that Fra Angelico has constructed the space kind of makes us wonder, are they more in our space or are they more in Christ's space? Because Saint Dominic as well is represented wearing the monk's habit that Fra Angelico and the other monks at his time would have been wearing. And the fact that he's studying and a book, presumably the Bible, and he's really intensely
Well, it's not
absorbed
Jilly
in it.
Cooper.
Yeah, he's like it's D.H. Lawrence. Um, he it's like again, it's that thing of he's a mediator between the scene of Christ suffering and the monk who would have been viewing it because he's also contemplating and meditating on
Yeah.
Christ. Um, which I feel like could potentially, and some people have said that it potentially makes Christ look like a vision. So it's like Saint Dominic's vision,
Mm.
potentially. Um, which would mean that maybe he's like conjured him up through his spiritual reflections. Um, and yeah, I think also another point is that the fact that Christ is clearly the most important figure in this scene, and that the torturers are almost just not worthy of representation. Like
Yeah.
it's like he won't
Faceless.
even deign to give them full bodies.
Mm.
Which is really powerful if you think about like the power dynamic of what it means to represent something and just being like, I refuse to represent. It's quite
Also,
interesting.
it'd be such a different painting and such a di like less serene space if it was sort of cluttered with all the people.
Yeah, because there's the chaos of it,
Mm.
definitely. And you still have the cruelty and the chaos and the confusion of those torturers. But yeah, you're right, that it would overtake the serenity, wouldn't it? Like,
Yeah, and you'd lose the figure of Christ in the crowd to some degree as well.
yeah, his calmness is the thing that we're being told to meditate on almost. At the
Yeah.
center of it all feels like that's what we should be taking away from this.
Mm.
Which makes him incredibly powerful as a figure that he can endure that, I guess. Um, yeah, so I was interested while I was reading about this particular fresco. I came across Ben Street's article from last year, as I mentioned, where he discusses two modern artists who are very interested in Fra Angelico and the impact that these frescoes had on their work. So,
Hmm.
and they're kind of surprising, actually. Well, maybe you know the story, but Mark Rothko really loved San Marco, and apparently he made two visits there, um, one in 1950 and one in 1966. Would you think that? I kind of see it.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel like there's certain artists that come up a lot in art school, and Fra Angelico is one of them, and maybe to a greater
Yeah.
degree Piero della Francesca. But
Yeah.
you hear these particular people quoted so much as sources of inspiration that then it doesn't really
Mm.
become surprising when anyone mentions them.
Oh,
You're like, oh, yes, of
interesting. For me, I was like, really?
course.
Yeah.
Well, I
Like I
guess
can
it's
see
that
it, but
division of space and
exactly.
the block
Yeah.
color and yeah, the tonal element of it and the color
Mm.
choices, you know. So
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. So Ben Street says the pale geometric planes that provide the infrastructure for the mocking of Christ, and the even clearer illumination within the painting seem eminently translatable into Rothko's delicate numinous color zones,
Mm.
which, yeah, is the zones of color, like you say, like the blocks and the planes and stuff. Yeah. The other one is Philip Guston, which I see a little bit more, but I also
Yeah.
don't know Philip Guston's work that well. Um, but for Philip Guston, Ben Street thought it was more about Fra Angelico's ability to communicate in everyday vernacular. So, like the blood drips and the head rolls and the tortures of this particular, seem. He says these shocking incidents in Angelico's paintings are folded into his clear-eyed vision of human behavior, with horror and serenity side by side, as in Guston's work of the 1970s, which I actually don't really know, but I do think there's something about the horror and serenity being together that is something, maybe that's the feeling of the modern in it,
Maybe
which
I've never found Guston's work very serene. I'll hold my hand up and
I'm,
say I'm not a fan.
I'm not a fan either. I'm not a fan either at all.
I've seen quite a lot of it,
Oh,
but I'm not
that's
a.
even worse. No, that's not worse. That's actually having engaged with it and just not liking it.
That's just art school, man. That's
That
just knowing a lot of painters, and a lot of painters really love Guston. So
yeah, yeah. It's funny how there are always these it's like in art history, there's always the certain philosophers that people bring up.
yeah.
And yeah, you just kind of yeah, it becomes not surprising when someone brings it up.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
think
God.
that's the thing with both Fra Angelico and with Guston. If someone
Yeah.
says they're an
Oh
inspiration to them, you
no.
go,
Oh, there you go. Well, I'm bringing back the art school traumas of having these artists flung on you all the
oh, I
time.
think you get
Not
to
a
a
Fra
certain age and you
Angelico.
feel much more able to say whether you do or you don't like something. I think when you first start art school, you definitely feel that this is what you're supposed to appreciate, and if you don't appreciate it, you're wrong. So,
That's the same with the philosophers, except with that, it's more like I genuinely just don't understand what's happening. So
mm.
I'm like, oh no. I don't know. Like I can't even be like I don't like it. It's like I actually just don't understand what's going on. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's probably also the difference, isn't it, with like reading versus viewing art. You can
Mm.
like see so immediately if
Yeah,
something so you can still obviously come back to it, and if you don't like something at the start, it doesn't mean that, well, as I've said before about various painters that I end up liking. But yeah, I think yeah, there's something quite fashionable as well, I think, about liking Italian Renaissance artists and bringing them into contemporary art. There's something kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, which I find funny because I don't really engage with the contemporary art side of it. So I'm like, yeah, obviously, Fra Angelico, woohoo. Um, so yeah, finally, just a little roundup of his life. Basically, Fra Angelico's this is like quite cool, I think, for him. His reputation reached Rome, which is like mega, I guess, at the time, because especially if you're a Dominican monk, it's
Home of the
probably
Pope.
pretty cool place to go. And in 1445, Pope Eugenius the Fourth invited him to paint frescoes in the Vatican. He also later worked for Pope Nicholas V. In Rome, Fra Angelico was in circles of important scholars, architects, and church leaders. And he actually died in 1455, so he had 10 years in Rome, at a Dominican convent in the city, where he's now buried. So, yeah, I mean, God, compared to the last artist I did, that was a breezy for him. Compared to Simeon Solomon's biography, it's like, woohoo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did pretty well.
Ends on a nice note, like Dominican guy in a Dominican convent, having a good time. Yeah. Anyone who goes to Florence, definitely go to San Marco.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
on the hit list.
It's on the hit list of obviously loads and loads of things, but it's my favorite place in Florence, definitely. One of, but yeah.
Thank you for joining us this week. We can never be 100% sure of the accuracy of historical events. However, the information we are providing is based on our own research. If there's a painting you'd like to hear us discuss, please let us know on social media. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for weekly episodes.